Did you know for National Lampoon's Vacation, all the cast members had terrible experiences when it came to filming the scenes inside Wally World, where they rode all of the roller coasters and other rides? In the commentary, Chevy Chase mentions that many of the rides made him and the other cast members vomit, especially since they all had to ride them several times for each take. Dana Barron mentioned in the commentary that the coasters made her so sick she had to take motion sickness pills and would pass out on nearby benches between takes. Finally, Anthony Michael Hall mentions that in the shots on the roller coaster where he looks scared, he wasn't acting. His fear in those shots was genuine. 2. Chevy Chase and James Keach stated in interviews that during the dog tied to the bumper scene, both he and Chevy were legitimately tearing up, and that Chevy consistently biting his lips and his shortness of breath were genuine. All because they were trying so hard to contain themselves from laughing. 3. There was a Wally World water park in London, Ontario, Canada, which opened several years after the movie was released. John Candy was invited to the opening of the park, but the park owners couldn't afford his appearance fee. Did you know for There's Something About Mary? The studio was initially reluctant to allow Ben Stiller, the Farrelly brothers' first choice to star, so the brothers decided upon a then unknown Owen Wilson instead. When the studio was even more reluctant to let Wilson star, they agreed to allow the Farrellys to cast Stiller. 2. Cameron Diaz was always the #1 choice to play Mary. The filmmakers thought she was the perfect woman. 3. After the financial losses suffered from Kingpin, the Farrelly brothers thought their next film would probably be their last. So they decided to go all out and deliver the most hysterically black comedy they could dream up. When this film became a box office smash hit, the Farrellys' careers were safe to continue. 4. Lee Evans' English accent in the movie was characterized by a film critic as quite possibly the worst fake British accent in a movie he had ever heard. Lee Evans is in fact English, and he deliberately exaggerated his accent for the role. 5. Chris Farley was considered for the part of Warren. He later passed away during the time this film was being made. Did you know for Twins, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito, and Ivan Reitman were realistic and level-headed about business, and thought this film might be a difficult sell? However, once they began screening the dailies, they knew the film would be a hit, because the people in the dailies screening room were laughing at 6 different takes of a scene. 2. Schwarzenegger got 20% of the profits and made $35 million through international sales, video, DVD sales, and TV screenings. He earned more money from Twins than any of the Terminator movies. 3. Arnold Schwarzenegger had been wanting to do a comedy for years after several action movies. Twins was his opportunity. 4. Arnold Schwarzenegger has always wanted to do a sequel called Triplets with Danny DeVito and adding Eddie Murphy as a long-lost third brother. DeVito pitched script ideas back in 2003, but Schwarzenegger was too busy running for governor of California. In 2012, at the end of Governor Schwarzenegger's second term, plans for the sequel were officially confirmed. Although as of 2019, Triplets is still in pre-production, and in April 2019, DeVito publicly disclosed that the final script is still incomplete. Did you know for Batman vs. Superman? Dawn of Justice, Ben Affleck said he was warned by Warner Brothers about the possible negative reaction to his casting, and was advised to remain off the internet after the casting announcement. He also said, to assuage his concerns, the studio showed him negative comments that fans had initially made to previous superhero castings. Affleck said in spite of the studio warnings, he still checked out an online message board. The first comment he read was, "Affleck as Batman. No!" After seeing that, he immediately went offline. 2. Ben Affleck stated in an interview that he had asked if he could have the Batsuit when filming was complete. The producers said yes, but that he would have to pay $100,000 in order to keep it. Affleck quickly changed his mind and asked if he could just take a picture with it instead. 3. Ben Affleck gained an additional 20 pounds of muscle and reached 8% body fat for his role as Bruce Wayne. 4. The day after he was cast as Batman, Ben Affleck began working out 2 hours a day and hated every minute of it, by his own admission. Did you know for Poor Things, Mark Ruffalo had a lot of doubts about his performance during the shoot. He often half-joked that his friend Oscar Isaac, who was filming on a nearby soundstage, was going to be called in to replace him. One day, Willem Dafoe pranked Ruffalo by taking him to a room where Isaac, who was in on the joke, was waiting. Isaac and Dafoe informed Ruffalo he was fired, and indeed getting replaced by Isaac. 2. Willem Dafoe described the makeup process, 4 hours in, 2 hours out, every day. I'm showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting in the chair, meditating, and trying to deal with standing still. You can't sleep because it's intricate enough that you've got to work with the people applying it. It's a grind, but I liked working with a mask in there. Quite literally, a mask. 3. Mark Ruffalo admitted that he normally strongly dislikes filming explicit scenes, but getting to perform most of those scenes with Emma Stone made them much more fun given her sense of humor and joking between takes. 4. The Lisbon set took 20 weeks to build. It would take 45 minutes to walk around the entire set. Did you know for Cars 3, during the voice actor recording process for Cars, director John Lasseter spent a lot of time in the recording booth with Paul Newman, who often regaled him with stories about his life and his many years as a race car driver. Lasseter said, "In a way, he mentored me in racing, because car racing was his true life's passion, and I made sure that whenever he came into the recording booth, we were recording everything. In between takes, he would tell me stories about great races, and you could hear the passion in his voice. Those recordings made it possible for Doc Hudson to reappear in this movie, released over 8 years after Newman's passing." Lasseter explained, as we started Cars 3, we went back to every recording we did on Cars 1 and cataloged and listened to it all, and ended up with a lot of material that we could use. Lines that were cut from the original film and never used, as well as some of those pieces from in-between takes. 2. The film features more than 65 different individual racers, more than the previous films combined. Cars had 36 racers, and Cars 2 had 11. Did you know for Lars and the Real Girl, to help Ryan Gosling stay in character, the real doll was treated like an actual person, as is done by the characters in the movie. She was dressed privately in her own trailer and was only present for scenes that she was in. 2. The real doll was featured on the Graham Norton effect. The doll was given to the show and was stated as costing $6,000. She arrived in the same kind of crate that is shown in the movie. To test how real the doll looked, they sat her in a bar with drink in hand, sunglasses, and a speaker placed on her so they could talk to whomever came up to talk to the doll. One man was told to go into the bathroom, take off his pants, and wait for her. And he did just so. 3. The real doll had 9 different faces, which were used to show a sort of evolution of the character. The doll starts with a face with heavy makeup, but then later uses a more natural-looking face without makeup. Finally, the doll's face becomes slightly green to reflect her failing health. 4. Ryan Gosling brought in a Talking Heads cassette to play during the filming of The Party, as he thought it would be cool for the scene. Did you know for AI artificial intelligence, Stanley Kubrick worked on the project for 2 decades before his passing? But along the way, he asked Steven Spielberg to direct, saying it was closer to his sensibilities. The two collaborated for several years, resulting in Kubrick giving Spielberg a complete story treatment and lots of conceptual art for the movie prior to his passing, which Spielberg used to write his own scenario. Contrary to popular belief, Spielberg claims he introduced many of the darker elements into the story, while Kubrick's main contribution consisted mostly of its sweeter parts. In a 2002 interview with movie critic Joe Layden, Spielberg indicated that the middle part of the movie, including the flesh fair, was his idea, whereas the first 40 minutes, the teddy bear, and the last 20 minutes were taken straight from Kubrick's story. Ian Watson, who wrote Kubrick's original treatment, confirmed that even the much criticized ending, assumed by many to be a typical Spielberg addition, was exactly what he wrote for Stanley, and exactly what he wanted, filmed faithfully by Spielberg. 2. Steven Spielberg passed on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Jurassic Park 3 to direct this film.